One. Welcome back, everyone. We got the Americans with you today. We got myself, and I have Alki with me. Alki, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Glad to be here as always, but also glad just after a good week and weekend.
Yeah, it's finally all smiles at PAO Fans International. We have some good stuff to talk about for a change. We're gonna dive into our EuroLeague game against Young Boys that happened last week, and then we're gonna talk about the game at the weekend, which was against Panetolikos. So let's start with the first one, which was our first EuroLeague game of the season. Couldn't have asked for anything much better. We beat Young Boys away 4-1, and I'm just gonna run through the highlights real quick because we got a lot to talk about. But we were up 3-0 before the 20th minute, thanks to a goal by Swiderski in the 10th, and then a brace by Zaruri in the 13th and the 19th minute. Um, they got one back in the 25th minute. It won't go down as an own goal, but it's the most own goal you'll ever see without it being really an own goal. Lafont
Right.
was caught away from goal. He overcommitted to his left side. He basically left the whole net open, and Yanko made it 3-1. That was how it ended at halftime. And then Zaruri got his hat trick in the 68th minute before he was taken off shortly after. And that was the final score, 4-1 away in our Europa League debut. We sit top of the table after one match week, which, okay, it's one match week out of eight, but it's nice to see us at the top of the table. Best goal difference. Alki, tell me about the game, what you saw, what you didn't see, what you liked, what you didn't like.
I mean, you kind of summed it up pretty well. I mean, the scoreline is pretty flattering. We did come out just, I think, really guns blazing, and it's not like none of our goals were kind of just willed in or fluke goals or anything like that. Like they were legit good goals off of good play and build up, and I think we've saw that over the weekend as well. But it was kind of after they scored their first, which I'll get back into in a second, but the game kind of just finally settled down, I think, for a bit. You never know what to expect when you see a game come off just off the rip in the first 30 minutes, and what was it, four goals between the two of us. Is just you never know how it'll go. Um, but it kind of settled down. There were a couple few things here and there that worried me as the game progressed because Young Boys, while it was a dominating performance from us, had a few moments where I was like, man, this 3-0 that turned 3-1, and sometimes it could have turned 3-2, 3-3 at certain points, or 4-3 even, I said. Like, there were a couple really concerning spots, but, they held on. And then obviously Zaruri getting that our fourth goal in his hattie was great. I think it was what the first hat trick by a PAO player. Somebody put it in the chat. I can't remember. It's been a while though. Um, I have to bring
Berg,
it up.
right?
I
Probably.
believe it's Berg, I
Yeah,
think, which, it's been a while since he last played for us. So,
yeah.
great to see just us scoring goals, which is awesome because as we've harped on for this season at least and last, like the offense and just getting the ball in the net has always been a struggle. The goal we conceded, I mean, like you said, not much to say other than it won't count as an own goal ever, but like if you look at it, you know, there's nobody to blame but Lafont. I mean, I saw some shouts for Sanchez could have closed out better, but realistically in my mind, like when you're that far wide of an angle, even if Sanchez doesn't close out, like Lafont's positioning was just so bizarre to me because he was way out. Even if Sanchez closed out any kind of deflection or if it was a cut back in, like you said, the goal was wide open, leaving almost no room for recovery for Lafont because he was on the floor too. I maybe it was
The
just
shot wasn't even hard. It was like a dribbling shot. Like it
yeah, it
wasn't,
almost looked like a cutback, kind of just laid it
yeah.
off in a sense, and maybe just lack of self awareness. He just kind of lost track of where his netting was behind him. But I mean, we'll
You
get into
know,
that some more too, because Lafont's just kind of he's worried me, I guess, to say.
He's been a little point of concern. He hadn't obviously that mistake to concede was a huge glaring issue. He didn't have anything that was anything else that was, as glaring as that, obviously, but there was a few moments where you could tell like he was kind of uninspiring. He was hesitating to come out sometimes, like the ball would, kind of be at the top of his box. Kontis or Ingerson or whatever would be kind of in that in-between space between him and the top of the box, and he would hesitate, and then he'd commit at the last moment, and you could tell it was too late. Kind of these, not confident plays, little rusty
Yeah.
situations. He had a few of those. They're overall not the not not the best performance, not the best performance, but
No. But like you said, it
hopefully,
could just be rusty, and we're hoping, if this goes 4 or 5 games, depending on how long drag is going to be out for, and even just cut matches and stuff, like if it continues, then I'd say that's more of a real point of concern at this point because it's consistent. But, I'm just hoping and thinking it's just, like you said, rust, getting acclimated to just pace of play, style of play, everything going on. Commanding the box maybe a little bit more, he's a
yeah.
newcomer and just something to kind of keep an eye on, but I'm definitely putting it on the back burner. Like we said,
Also gelling with those center backs, right? That's something that's super important that, it takes a little bit of time. It's funny to think about it in this way because there's not, they're completely different players, a goalie and a center back, but they have to have good chemistry. They have to know what the other one wants to do, is going to do this and that. And that just kind of takes time, like, and it takes real game time. It doesn't really take practice time. So, if you're gonna have Tuba and Palmer Brown as your main center backs and Lafont behind them, they need to kind of gel together and actually get some game minutes, which they are now. And hopefully we see that payoff with them having a little more chemistry down the road.
yeah, definitely, and just kind of we'll leak into like we'll talk about later, but like there's been rotation too, so like he's seen a different back four. I think he's seen a different back four between both games.
Right.
Maybe twice in each game actually with fullbacks rotating, even center back pairings and stuff. But yeah, that's just kind of something to keep an eye on because he did it at the weekend too. There's just certain moments. I'm not really too concerned, like you said, but it is, if it keeps up, it could become costly like later down the road. Um, Other than that, though, yeah, it was, I think, a great game. I think it just kind of came down to. I'm trying to jog my memory. I think when, our fullbacks definitely showed to be exposed in that game, I think was the biggest concern. I think Kontis played a good game, but at the same time, he had some moments. Can never have a perfect game from him. You're bound to get a little bit of one side or the other. And Mladenovic, love his passion, and everything, but a lot of it's just, concerning with his lack of awareness. But overall, yeah, like I said, not too much to harp on. Swiderski got a goal. He was involved and has definitely turned things around compared to the start of the season. He was awesome. And yeah, Tete's getting going too. And then Zari's just, finding his place in the team, whether he comes off the bench or starting. It's good to see, especially with the rotation. Everyone's kind of getting involved, and just the style of play under Kontis is really refreshing compared to what we've kind of seen and the lack of offense.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned that because kind of one of our huge, I mean, not one of the biggest complaint recently with Rui was kind of the lack of putting away chances and the lack of these big score lines. And it's not that you need to score 4 goals every single time, but there were many opportunities where we should have been putting more goals by opponents, and we actually needed a lot of these games, like a lot of these 1-0s, 1-1s at the beginning of the season. We needed to put away those opportunities, and we were not. And this one could have been just like that if we hadn't if we hadn't actually executed and put those those opportunities away. I was thinking to myself, we could laugh about the Lafont situation and the goof that he did, but imagine if that cost us cost us points in that game because in 2 weeks ago that could have cost us
Absolutely.
points because we were not scoring 2 3 let alone 4 goals. So I
Right.
was just like, thank God this game script went down the way it did and we actually started doing what we were supposed to do. finish our opportunities because in another world, that Lafon goal, the goof, we take a draw away from there, and it feels like a loss.
1000%. And I think that just kind of just changes the dynamic maybe within the team. We've seen it. I mean, there's been those funny posts Sturg talked about, like, oh, what kind of drill is this? Everyone was harping about it, but it's like, I don't know. It just seems like there seems to be like a lifted spirit within the team. And Zari, by the way, a winger, like, I think the stark difference you'll see is a lot of play under Rui was whether it's Forte or Swiderski, a lot of times it played through them and they're just kind of on an island where our wingers weren't pushing up as much. And to see a winger occupy the boxes, all of Zari's goals, other than I think maybe was it his first or second where he kind of got the rebound, still inside the box, but we haven't seen guys like Tete or Pelistri in the past, no harp on them, but like occupying that close in the box, just waiting for things like this happen, like a rebound or something. Because like I think Zari's final goal was a perfect uh representation of like what Swiderski's capable of. The ball came into him. Yeah, he didn't get contact, but drawing that defender out, leaving Zari wide open to be able to get there if it misses Swiderski and he's right there and just pounces on it, pops it right in. I don't know style of play if we would have seen something like that from under Rui, having our wingers that honed in on the box, like looking for rebounds like that. Um,
The kind of what you're saying, which is something I noticed in the moment very early on in the game, before even I think a goal came, is that there seems to be kind of a boost in not only motivation of the team, but also passion and urgency, which kind of bleeds into what happened at the weekend too. But before we weren't even down, but we felt like we were playing with kind of this boost, and maybe it's just a morale boost, coaching change, things are looking better, this and that. But players who have disappointed us this year immediately all together in this game, in this one game, all of a sudden showed up. And I'm talking about guys like, okay, you could talk about Zaruri. He's the obvious one. He scored 3 goals, so that's easy. But other guys who didn't really, didn't score 3 goals and are not going to get as much praise. But like I said, this was very good in that young boys game. Kontis was very good, and he's very hit or miss like over the past year. But he showed up and he put in a shift on the right and was playing very well with Tete offensively, defensively. He did not get really caught out except for a few moments, like you said. Tete himself has been one of the worst players this season so far, like a shadow of himself. And he also showed up this game. Swiderski, like all I'm trying to point out, those are I think the big five that stand out to me because
yeah.
those five have all been subpar so far, and they all of a sudden in this game came alive. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Like, you'd expect like, oh, one guy, two guys turn the page and they put in a good performance and maybe that's a sign of new things. But all these guys at the same time kind of turning the page together is more than just a coincidence. And I think it points to what's going on in the club and the positive situation that's coming out of this thing.
Yeah, whether it's coaching or whether it's tactics or just like you said, something's there. You just see, I think hunger is what I'm thinking of when I see this team play now because like if you look at that compared to like the derby with Olympiacos and just how content we were playing being the one up until that goal happened and even when the goal happened we saw guys jogging back, walking back and annoyed that they scored, but didn't really seem like there was any urgency after that or during like there's just such a big black and white difference and it's showing in their play like you said their effort guys that don't even show up on the score sheet or stat sheet in
Yeah.
that sense but you just see such a big difference like you said a boost and whatever it is combination of things it's just nice to see especially after the last episode you and I did was I don't even know if Rui was gone yet or not. Maybe he
No, I don't think he
was.
wasn't. He
Maybe he
wasn't, I
was,
don't
but we
think.
just didn't know what was going to
Yeah,
happen. Like we were basically looking at it like a dark cloud was over our head. And that could have
exactly. Yeah.
been a very reactionary thing, but the reality is like that was a highly likely situation. Like I probably would have bet my money that we would have had opposite results compared to what we're coming in talking about today. Like I never would have seen this coming.
Yeah, and to be fair, got to give some credit wherever it's due. I don't know where it's due, but wherever it's due, like most of us as a fan base were kind of down on the decision to dismiss Rui at least this soon. Felt a little premature, especially when guys like we said it, Alonso got way longer leashes, um, with probably worse performances and worse results. So it just felt premature. We were down on the decision, but so far the decision has kind of only been good because the results are showing the state of the play is also showing to be better. Like we're kind of harping on, the players are showing positive morale boost from it. So I guess credit is due somewhere. Um, but not too soon because we also got to make the right decision down the road, which we'll get to after we're done talking about the games. But yeah, I mean everything went right this game. You can't really hope for much more away in Europe to start it off. Like it only sets you up on the right foot because again, it doesn't get easier from here. It doesn't get particularly harder. You just got to continue the job, right?
Exactly, exactly. And that's all we can continue to do. But, not only having that win, but having a 4-1 win with such a good goal differential, just gives, I think, a boost and helps ease the pain a little bit or gives them a cushion for whatever comes next.
And some context is that Young Boys has not been a particularly strong team in Europe recently. I think they lost all 8 of their Champions League games last year. I think they're actually winless in their last 10. So their European form is not good. Um, so on the one hand, we did what we needed to do, just
Right.
continue their bad European form. On the other hand, there's no easy European games, and there's no easy away European games. It's not something that you take for granted. So this is also a team that in fairly recent years has like beat Man United. So okay, that was obviously more in the past than their 8-10 game unbeaten winless run, but you know,
But even at
there's
that, I
there's still some
mean,
pedigree.
there's games like this where you also have to be really, really proud of just the team and what they accomplished because games like this in the past, like in teams of this level, like we talked about, whether we want to prop them up and not diminish them or put them on a lower scale than what we're used to, like we have had trouble. We always used to play like to the level of our opponent sometimes. And so like games like this in the past, like you said, this could have easily been a 1-1 draw with that Lafont error in years past or games past. And this time around, it wasn't that, we went at it, took a team that's on the downward spiral and took advantage of it. So just got to be happy about that. And like you said, maybe this is a new page turning and just for the right direction. But
And
um,
again, and one more thing, even going into this game, like right before it, we were not feeling super hot just because of where the team was, all this. There was a semi-rotation. We had guys like Ingeson in there who ended up doing very well, I think. Mladenovic, who did fine enough. So we didn't really inspire a lot of confidence based on where the team was, the semi-rotation, and we got shut up basically.
Well,
Cody
and we just
read
came back from that Olympiacos derby that just ended like complete crap. I mean,
exactly.
the morale wasn't very good for the players or for us as fans, realistically.
But we were shut up, and I guess that's all we could hope for. So we will come back to Europe in a bit. For now, we'll move on to the next game that happened after, which was the Panetolikos game at the weekend. Um, Drama, different type of drama than the European game last week, but we won 2-1. Goals courtesy of Tete and Yeremayev for us, and they opened the score first with Aguirre in the 18th minute with a penalty. So we left it late this time. That game felt very reminiscent, fittingly enough, because obviously Cody was Jova's assistant, but that game felt very reminiscent of kind of a Jova era game where we would, be 1-1, 1-0, 1-0-0. And there were numerous times where Jerry or Sporar saved us. I remember, I think it was against Aris. It was it was the year where we botched the 11-point lead, and we started off that historic run with I think it was 9 straight wins. And the ninth one was, I think, Addis at home, and it was 0-0, and Sporar won it in stoppage time, like 94th minute or something.
His famous celebration, he takes his shirt off and running around. Yeah, I remember.
reminded me exactly of that. So yeah, it was kind of fitting because of, what Kontis represents and his connections. But yeah, that felt good. That felt good. A different kind of good than the Young Boys game, obviously. What are your impressions?
I mean, you kind of put it just as it is, just kind of reminiscent, very different than the European game, but at the same time, it didn't feel like there was any content with how things are going on the field. Where in games past, that's like kind of the energy or vibe it felt like. Especially when Tete scored the goal, you could see he was celebrating, but instant reaction to celebrate, like, yeah, grab the ball, let's run it back, like, and they wanted more and they wanted more, and none other than our Lord Savior Jerry with the header. Um, and yeah, I mean, the game itself was an interesting game. We can kind of talk about the details of, again, another heavy rotation and stuff. It was a wet field. I think it was raining for a good chunk of it, then it stopped and came back. So, kind of played into it. I made comments about just Panetolikos' stadium as a whole. It's kind of just a weird setup and whatnot. But I was gonna ask thoughts on the penalty call.
Um, I haven't looked much into what people are saying. I do think it was a penalty. I think the ball's going towards the goal. That's probably the biggest factor in giving it a penalty. The biggest shout against it being a penalty is obviously the lack of reaction time based on the new rules. You basically have to have some sort of time to react. I think that's the main argument against it, but for it is ball's going towards the goal and the hand is outstretched and it's in an unnatural position. I think basically, like I'm saying, there's arguments on both sides. I do think there's more arguments for penalty. I didn't really in the moment. I didn't. Um, Let me say I didn't have a problem with it being given a penalty. That doesn't mean I was happy with the situation. Obviously, I want us to
Right.
whatever to not concede penalties like that, but I wasn't screaming at my TV saying that's not a penalty. I
I
was
don't think
like,
it was
yeah,
blatant
that's
enough to like fight it and say no. I feel the
yeah,
same way. I mean, I think in the moment I was like, the rule, the new rule states like off a header, it can't be given unless it's like blatant and obvious. And chatting wasn't there, but after seeing it later on and stuff, like you said, I could see an argument either way, but unnatural, maybe. I mean, they're going up for the ball. He does kind of put his arm out once it's hit. So, I mean, I'm not one of those like where it's going to be blatant obvious where I'm like shouting at my TV, like you said, but just kind
yeah,
of curious because obviously it's anytime there's a penalty or an offside goal, even because I'll ask you about that too. They scored a goal that was then later called off. Um, in my mind, seeing the first and second replay, I thought it was just as obvious as could be. I think the line they showed with VAR showed it was obviously way, way closer.
yeah,
I don't know if that was the really even the right line, but not gonna argue it. I think in some capacity or way, like you can tell though they were off. That's the other big one is, the penalty shouts and then the offside goal and how we got bailed out by the refs again by being saved and they didn't get their offside goal and then but we still answered in the end with Yeremeyev with that header sealing the win and um yeah, I don't have really too much more to say on it other than the same stuff we covered with Europe, like guys like Tete for example, he did score the goal, but even in the game in Europe and even this like you just see him guys like him who have just been there's been shouts sell him in January instantly,
yeah, yeah,
which I'm just like kind of on either side, but shouts like that, and then you just see him in these last two games, even without the goal, just very more involved, getting lots of touches, just getting in the flow, whereas before it was very static, like feed him the ball on the wing, and then he tries to beat his man, and it's either across into nobody, or he just doesn't beat his man. It's very been stale his play, and like I think these last two games, he said like lots of touches. Fiederski, good touches. Like again, just overall on all sides felt good. So to
Yeah,
have your
and
rotation, new center back pairing, I think this one, Ingeson
this one
and
was
Palmer Brown.
Ingerson, Palmer Brown. Yeah, so yeah, you're right. Another new center back pairing in front of Buffon, who needs to gel with these guys. And you're right. It doesn't help. You have to rotate, especially when you have 2 games a week, week after week, which is what we're deep into now. But it doesn't help. It doesn't help the new keeper trying to come into the team. If the keeper's established, like Drago's established and all that, the rotation in front of him is more seamless and less problematic. But throwing in the new keeper and rotating the guys, it just doesn't really help with that chemistry building. But it'll get there.
Yeah, and I mean to LaFon's defense, he was obviously thrown in and not being able to get much gelling time, like you said, just because Drag got injured. But I mean, we saw that even last year and the year before. Like Lodigan at times, I think, was it not last season, the season before, when Dragowski, before he came in during his injury time, like Lodigan looked great, but he got lots of consistent back-to-back starts or times. And then there was times like last season where we're just like, a lot of us are like, thank God he was sold because he just looked the complete opposite. So
Right.
you can tell like it obviously not getting consistent time has an effect. So um LaFont just looked okay this game. Not, I wouldn't say as bad as the previous one. He did come out on, like the goal they scored, I would say, that ended up getting called off, I think was kind of a big error on his end. Kind of sat and debated whether to come out, and then when he did come out, he missed it completely. Um,
Exactly the things I was saying that I saw in that European game, like this hesitation, like the ball's in this in between spot between the last line of defenders, and like, is he coming out? Is he not hesitating? And that split second hesitation costs you, right? Like that, it's such a game of, I mean, it's a game of inches. That's what they say about baseball. But like when we're talking about this situation with a goalie coming out, it's a game of milliseconds. Because if you hesitate for that 1 millisecond, you're caught out, and then you're in no man's land.
yeah, you either got to commit or just stay home
Right.
and just you end up dealing with whatever decision you make. But like we said,
Right.
like that, if their player was half a step back, they would have been on, and that would have been a very costly goal. I would say probably on him mostly, but um, I don't know. Outside of that, I don't have really too much to add to it. I mean, what are your thoughts?
I was really, really, really happy to see kind of what we saw on last Wednesday, kind of bleed into the weekend in a different sense, like that passion, that motivation. Like on Wednesday, we needed it from the beginning, get off on the right foot, put the game to bed before halftime. Not today, yesterday, we needed it in a different sense to get this comeback victory. And 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we would have just rolled over, right? It would have just ended 1-0. Going down so early in the 18th minute, we would have just been deflated. Um, and that just wasn't the case. And I really see like over these 2 games, just like really boosting morale, motivation, players, like we said, that haven't been contributing. Tete for 2 games in a row now, being a big contributor, kind of showing the traits that he showed in the beginning. Um, Swiderski again, like these guys are feel like they have a new life in them. Um, and it showed for all 90 minutes. Like that life that we saw in those Jova games is feeling like it's there again. And it wasn't there for a long time, which is why you don't have any hope in the 90th minute. There was such a big period of time in this season and even sometimes last season where you didn't really have hope in the 90th minute, right? And we're kind of finding that hope again in the 90th minute. Again, I liken it to that Addis game that it reminded me of, but it wasn't just that Addis game. There was so many countless times, like we said, in the Jova era where we didn't die and we either stole a point or stole all 3 points in the dying moments.
Yeah, and then this game, I mean, was capped off by the two substitutions. Sanchez came in, and he's the one that put that ball into Yeremayev, and Yeremayev. I guess my question is, I'll ask now, seeing the sub of Yeremayev coming on, regardless of how we joke about his goal to minute rate ratios. Like I think after last season, it kind of dipped down a little bit, but was and still probably is kind of insane in a funny way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but going into it, even after Tete's goal 1-1, you could see the hunger and stuff. But seeing him come on and Sanchez, for me, great substitutions in both games, by the way, for Kontis. They all paid off. But seeing it initially, after they were pushing for that second goal, even in the game yesterday, seeing those two come on, even though I saw that they were needed as far as just rotation and minutes, for a second, my heart or my mind was kind of like, man, this is really might cut off the flow and like the energy of the game. Seeing Yermejev coming on, even Sanchez, did you expect another goal to come, let alone
Um,
from him?
I I didn't expect it because um no, I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. I just feel like, it's not against him, but he just hasn't had a lot of game time. So it's hard to really ask that much of him. But now in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, of course he did because Kodis trusted his guy, right? Kodis trusted his guy who's come through for him, for him and Yova in the past, and he trusted his guy, and there kind of was only one way that was ever finishing, and it was with his goal. Again, I just keep harping on about very, very Yova era, and obviously Kodis was very involved in that. So, no, in the moment I didn't see it. In hindsight, I'm like, yeah, of course it happened.
Because I think he was on for 15 minutes, so he was on there for a good
Yeah.
amount of time. I thought it was more closer to the end of it, but yeah, just kind of a weird, happy turn of events. Just like you said, it's very reminiscent, and maybe that's just the kind of aura the team's been missing since they let Yova go. But
I can't speak for anything that really happens in the locker room. Obviously, we're not there and we know, the limited that we know, but there's a lot of similarities with Rui and Godi kind of personality wise from what we see. They're both, soft-spoken guys, not, super loud, like unlike someone like Tareem, let's say, who obviously is a different type of personality. So Rui and Cody very similar, but if you had to tell me who's gonna, hype up the guys in the locker room, it would be Cody. Um, Based on just kind of a feel that you get, even though he's soft spoken, I feel like he could rile up the guys in a positive way, kind of like a captain would. While Rui, I just don't get that sense from him. And it feels like that kind of was something that perhaps was missing, like this get these guys going, get them ready for the game, get them ready for the challenge that's in front of them, like all this thing, stuff that a captain would do, but it's not limited to the captain, it's the captain, the coach, all this stuff. It's a whole team of people who take on this responsibility. And I see that happening without knowing for sure. I see that happening, at least in theory, from Cody more than I would have thought about seeing it in Rui. And that could definitely be a reason that we see this kind of boost in morale performance from guys that were not performing just 2 weeks ago. And the results, right?
yeah, I mean, definitely agree. I mean, and we're grasping at straws here. This could be a reach, but even stuff like when Zari, for example, when he got his hat trick, like social media team posted in the locker room them celebrating. The first guy to get the team riled up was Cody, who's giving that speech and banging on that table and saying, "Here's your game ball" and stuff. And it's like I don't recall ever, if you were to scroll through social media, like them showing Rui in the locker room, kind of with that type of energy or anything. Like it was always very, like you said, soft spoken but kind of serious and reserved in a sense. And even
Yeah.
in I think interviews, he kind of came off that way. And Cody, like you said, kind of the same personality, but I think there's just a little more extra to him. Um, and he's obviously and thankfully a familiar face for some of these guys, or at least for the club, because he's been an interim manager here before. Um, so yeah, I mean, onward and upward. I mean, that kind of might bleed into what we're gonna talk about next with with Godi's success so far.
Yeah. So this is kind of the big question now that we've been talking about, and I'm sure it's trouble. I hope it's troubling someone and who's making decisions, but has he done enough to be appointed permanent manager?
Yeah, and I think Sturg alluded to, I think Leoforo said on their last recording, I think they did after the game yesterday, that word is, and I don't know if you saw this or heard this, but Alafouzos, obviously wants a big name top coach, and that's the goal right now. And Godis is, as a plan right now, just an interim, but I think he mentioned on their recording that, if Godis keeps this up and they don't, it sounds like they're not keen on making a decision yet. I don't know how quick they can make one anyways, but if Godis pulls off another two big wins over these next two or three games, that, there's going to be strong consideration for him to actually just stay on. I mean, he's obviously a consideration right now, I think, but I think that's just more of a formality because he's there. It's more of a consideration versus actually legit them offering him a spot. But I mean, we even said it last time for him as an interim manager, like, he's familiar with the team. He was assistant under Yova. He knows, plays a certain way. And I think last time he was around, he had a decent record. I think they won two games under him. And then obviously we brought somebody else in. But,
He
we're
was there
still
for the
looking
cup
at,
win too.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So we're still looking, still relatively small sample size, but like still very impactful because even when the cup wins and the two games he won last time were at very crucial moments for our season. Um, and it's hard to like not look at Goddi as a serious consideration just because of his familiarity. You see the uplift in the team. He's Greek. He knows his way around the league and the team. Like for me, it would be just kind of like a no-brainer. At least for me, I would at least just consider him for at least the rest of the season. I don't know what this fixation or, you know, whatever it is of needing to always bring in a big name. Jovanovic, for example, like not to say that he wasn't a big name, but I don't consider him as big of a name as like the other guys that we had looked at or been rumored to in seasons, like Sari, for example, over that, or even Alonso was still, I think, more of a household name, or probably on the same par as Jovanovic. Jovanovic obviously had a pretty decent resume and familiarity, but I don't think anyone expected the type of success Jovanovic had brought when we
right.
first brought him on, and I think from my point of view, Goddi should remain just at least for the rest of the season. I don't know who they've been talking to. If you look, like for example, on Transfer Market, the number of available coaches and the names that are there, um, there's definitely some good names, but like we've talked about countless times, what are we presenting them with at this point? We're in a high right now because of the wins, but for a big name coach to come in and evaluate Panathinaikos over a whole and just look at us for the past 7, 10 seasons, let's say, and our record and what we've got, academy, resources, everything, budget, do we really attract a big name manager? Because any big name manager we brought in, it's turned out, they either don't pan out or they just don't want to be here.
I pretty much agree with everything that you said. I think at the very least, Cody has done enough to be in the conversation, right? Like we don't have to close doors. We don't have to. I don't think we have to rush into uh, a decision soon. Obviously, at some point there has to be a formal decision, but I don't think we need to expedite it. There's no reason to expedite it
Right.
ridiculously. So I think at the very least he's earned himself consideration. He's an option at least. He's 3 games now, right? 2 wins, 1 draw. Um, the draw was kind of a must-win situation because we are how critical can you be there? He won his um he won his first game in Europe. That was I mean I'm sure that was his European debut. So he's definitely done enough, I think, to earn himself a spot in the conversation. I agree this big name stuff, this also emphasis on foreign manager over and over again. we've talked about in the past. I'm not sure where this, affliction comes with foreign manager. There's probably some pressure from kind of the tendencies that the other top four do, like all the top four foreign managers.
Oh, I don't know if it's your connection, Alex, but I think we might have lost you. All right, I'm gonna message you real quick, but oh, there we go.
Was that me? Was that you? I don't know.
On my side, it came from your side, but
Okay.
I think the last gist we got was just, like you and I said, just this affliction with, foreign managers and kind of rolls off of what the other top four are doing. But
Yeah.
um, to add to that, I don't get it either because while we can say Jovanovic was a foreign manager, we did the kind of the opposite because he had familiarity with the league teams and the guy every press conference tried to speak or did speak
Yeah.
fluent Greek as much as he
Yeah.
could, and we kind of stayed away from the typical formula in Greece, and that was literally our only ounce of success in the last decade. And now when we've looked like, before Libiokos' success in Europe and stuff in previous years, they went through a circus, what a merry-go-round of coaches. And Ike did, Bauk did before, they had their success. And now it's our turn. We're going through that. This is an interim. And if Kontis stays or goes, realistic, he's the what? We've had Terim, Alonso, Rui, and Godi. I mean, it's four managers in a what season and a half, basically 2 seasons.
Yeah. And that
Just
that's kind of what we lost when Yova was sacked, regardless if it was right or wrong for that season, right? What we lost in the bigger scheme of things was this stability, with us for 2.5 years. That was unheard of for our standards. I think the coach before him that had a tenure that was anywhere close to that was Anastasio, right? So
mhm.
whatever went down that season, stability, right? Stability, stability, stability. That to us is priceless. It was priceless then, and it's still priceless to us now because we're reeling from it.
And you look at the other three or four teams, any success they've had is because of that stability. I mean, for a while, Olympiacos got built up in Europe. Martins was there. He left obviously on a sour note and brought them down, but Mendilibar has been there now for I think what this is his third season possibly. Ike had a lot of success with Almeida, who was there for multiple seasons. Bao climbing the ladder and giving everyone a go with Lucesu, and so the formula is there. It doesn't matter who it is necessarily, as long as you have somebody give them the time and they're not necessarily derailing things like unfortunately we had with like Alonso, for example, as far as like, success. But that just addiction in Greece with having the revolving door of coaches, needs to stop as much as you can if you want to find any kind of, stability. But you know, it's the Greek league, and we see it happen every
I
year,
think
unfortunately.
I don't know if anyone has said this. There is kind of part of me that feels like there is Cody kind of is at a disadvantage because if he's appointed as coach, I think it kind of pretty clearly shows that a mistake was made 2 years ago, when Yovo was sacked. So all I'm saying is that there might be an aversion from the people making decision or the person making the decisions that I can't really do this because it points to there being a mistake when the guy who he's you know associated with was sacked. It kind of reverts that decision. Um,
But on the
I don't
flip
know.
side, like you said earlier, there's no rush, and I don't disagree. But if let's go with that theory, and we don't rush, and Goldie stays on for 3 or 4 or 5 more games, he wins 3 or 4 out of them, and then you still end up bringing in another coach. It's like, what does that say to Kodis? Like, hey, we brought you in, you've done all this success. He's
Yeah,
staying on, there's no rush. So you get some sense of awareness that maybe this giggles. I mean, nothing's guaranteed, obviously, but there's just like you said, that same on the flip side, that same feeling of like building all this up and letting him stick around and he's just success and then just kicking him to the curb and bringing somebody completely foreign new in.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird, like I said, it's a tough spot to be in. We are coming in today happy as could be and gonna ride this wave, but again, we still have to look at the bigger picture of like the situation we're in. While it's good now because we're winning, still overall doesn't make anything easier. And like I said, depends on who's at the top making those decisions. And I mean, there's different rumors of that changing and coach, I mean, I guess let's talk about you probably have a better scope on. I've only seen links of just like transfers, coaches when we've got a vacancy. I've seen a ton of names, but what are the names that you're seeing that we've got some pretty heavy links to?
The only one that I think is getting like significant traction is Rebrov, who's currently the coach of Ukraine. Um, it I don't know how much weight I would even put in it because kind of like in the past, like these decisions, like you get these rumored names both with transfers and with coaches, and then the real guy
The
comes out of
name.
nowhere. So I don't know how much weight I'd put
Yeah.
in it. Also his circumstances weird. Like he's currently under contract with Ukraine, so
We'd
I
have
don't
to buy
know
him out,
why he
spend more
would.
money, he'd leave. There's just a lot of
Exactly.
weird stuff.
So there doesn't really seem to be any reason that that would happen. I think even Shevchenko, who's the president of their FA, did he say that that's not going to happen? Like he's not going anywhere or something like that. Um, I don't, I don't really buy this that much. I don't know why he would be the name that we're hearing. Like, is that just Greek media? What is it? Is this just a name that, you know, was thrown out to the media to, you know,
Stir things up
just
and get things
sand?
going. Just like Benitez, for example, that was the other one I was in. Tell you, Rafa was mentioned as always. This is, I think, the fourth
Yeah.
year. But I think that was tweeted out by Horianopoulos a few days, like a week ago, I think, and nothing's come of it since. The Rebrov one, I remember seeing that, but nothing's come of it since it was initially rumored. But I guess that's just kind of where we stand. There's no real heavy links. I think Rebrov is the only one everyone's talking about that's like the real
Yeah.
contention, but there's still nothing set in stone. Like there's no set. I don't think they've said that they've met. Usually we'll see like with the Sari saga, for example. He was in Greece. They had discussions. It was salary. It was this. With these, it's just kind of like this. There's an interest, a mutual interest, but like nothing's come of it since then.
Yeah. Um, I don't even know what his record is with Ukraine, but I feel like Ukraine has kind of underperformed. Like they haven't,
They've been kind of up and down, yeah.
and I know there's like a situation obviously going on in Ukraine, but they're still competing for qualification and stuff like that. And I feel like they've not
And I think
really.
they've kind of gone through quite a few coaching changes, I think, over the last few tournaments. I think, like, again, I could be misquoting because it's been a while since I've looked, but I mean, have they had I think there's one coach prior to Rebrov, but after Shevchenko, because I think Shevchenko was a manager there coaching them
He
for
was, yeah.
pretty recent too, I want to say. I think Rebrov, I could be mixing him up too, but because my wife's Armenian, I follow their national team too, and I think he was a coach. He might have been a coach there prior to Ukraine, or I could be mixing him up with someone else. I do remember Armenia had the former Ukraine national team coach as their coach, but it could have
His
been somebody else.
his career is as the chief manager is Dynamo Kiev, Al Ahly in I think
Oh,
Saudi,
okay, I see it. Yep,
French Varos, Al Ain, and then Ukraine, and he averages basically 2 point some points per match, 2.2, 2.08, 2.08, 2.08. Funnily enough, three of his stints are literally exactly 2.08. And his only stint that's less than 2 points
is
per
with
match
Ukraine.
is with Ukraine. So Um,
And the
yeah,
leagues he's obviously coached in aren't really, I wouldn't say, well, I would say they're a little lower than the Greek league. Not that our league is higher, but
yeah,
other than Dinamo Kiev, but I mean, that was almost a decade ago too. So, um,
yeah.
so
So I don't,
yeah,
yeah, I I'm not putting too much weight in this. I think we're gonna hear more names and we're gonna be surprised in the end, and maybe it's just Scotty in the end, which if, like you said, if he goes 4 or 5 more games and impresses, there's no reason that we need to, I don't think, force something to happen. Also, just by the way, he's kind of set up for exactly that to happen. Like, I'm not saying anything is easy, but he's got kind of a cupcake situation going on. If you look at our
schedule.
schedule, like we have, and we'll get into these games, but just as a preview, we have Go Ahead Eagles on Wednesday, which okay, it's a European match, but it's probably our easiest opponent in Europe, and it's home. Then we have Atromitos at home at the weekend, and then we have. Is it Aris? I guess. I guess Aris is the next game.
Aris, yeah. So we have Go Ahead,
Yeah.
Atromitos, Aris, which we are away at, and then it gets back to a little bit difficult with
Okay. Okay.
Feyenoord,
Yeah.
Asteras, Atromitos again. Like the
Okay.
cushion,
So those, yeah.
as we mentioned, if the rumors are true about Alafouzos thinking Kontis is going to be given the job or a real serious consideration if he wins these next 2 or 3 games, if you're looking at our schedule right now, like you said, is it's the sweet spot. This is the jackpot for him to prove it.
At least this next week, right?
Absolutely. These next 2 games that we have this weekend at the weekend, anything less than I'd say 3 points for each would be somewhat of a disappointment. Like you said, Europe is never easy, and nothing should be given. But like you said, the opponent should be one of our easiest we've had in Europe in a very long time. So, um, yeah, yeah, I think that's pretty much it on the coaching thing. Then there's um, the rumors. Is it Baldini? Is what his name is?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So we've heard rumors
You're kind of breaking out, by the way, Alex, on my
about
end.
this kind of let me move. So there's this kind of that we've heard rumors about. Um, and that name, that's there hasn't been multiple names floating around, but there's been one name who is Franco Baldini, and he's kind of been game. If anybody knows anything about him, but he was someone who, one second, I just gotta go turn on a light. Not bad.
You're all good.
He's kind of been out of the game. He's not super old. He's like 60 some years old, and he has a pretty good resume. Um he's been at, let me see, where is it here? He's been at Tottenham, he's been at Real Madrid, he's been at Roma, he's been at England. Yeah, that's his kind of overhead career. And um, the weird thing about him, he's kind of had different positions at each place he's gone. So at Roma, this is just straight from Wikipedia. But at Roma, he was director of football. At Real Madrid, he was a director. At England, he was assistant manager. At Roma, he was a director again for a second stint. And then at Tottenham, he was a technical director. So again, those are technically different positions. A lot of overlap in those positions.
Right.
Um, Now he's going to be a CEO. How different is that? How similar is that to these things? Um, Obviously, I think being a CEO kind of is he's kind of
In
positioned to be
charge
this
of things.
all encompassing, in charge person, and um, his
Kind of like
previous experience in these.
how
Well,
Papadine got
yeah,
his current role, and it's kind of just like a different way of saying his role, I guess you would say. But how that would work, like you were gonna say, is just
you'd
Alafuzos, we
expect
obviously
him
know has final say, but
you'd expect him to have more responsibility than Papadzim as a CEO rather than as a technical director, which is what Papadzim is right now. But there certainly is overlap and conflict with that. So although they could probably both exist in the same club, and they probably should, like any other club has a CEO and a technical director. So I'm not saying they're by definition at odds with each other. What we know of Babadzim so far and kind of what we can predict about the CEO position, there would be some conflict, and not just conflict in what your responsibilities are, but also conflict with kind of what we know about the personality of Papadzim and how he handles things within the club. So
Because
it's
of course, if
really
Alafozos has final say, it could come down to like, I want this player, and Baldini says no. Who's to say Papadim doesn't just go straight to Alafozos and convince him like we've kind of heard, or how some of these other deals have gone down?
right.
It's just gonna be, it's weird. I mean, when I first heard the name and the idea of it, I'm 50-50 split on it. Like it's kind of exciting because in my head I would think, because like you said, there's overlap. Like I don't see a world where Papadzim would even be around anymore. But on the flip side, it kind of worries me because even though this guy's got a good resume, everyone has their one hit or miss. But the story, I don't know if you've heard this, but the story with Baldini is he's one of the few, when he was at Roma in both stints, wanted to sell or get rid of Totti, who, as everyone knows,
Mm.
is Roma legend, the guy of Roma.
That was like
Um,
in like what, like 2000, like one or something, right?
it was the early to mid 2000s, and Totti was, I think,
Yeah,
probably at his peak. I don't know the
yeah,
details of it, if there was just a falling out with him or if he wanted to get rid of him, because of his value at the time. If you look at Roma historically, they're not at least up until recent years in the last decade, maybe at best, a team that financially goes out and breaks the bank really ever.
yeah.
Like they did recently with getting Dybala there from Juve and obviously bringing in Mourinho. Ranieri has had some good runs there and bad ones, but like they're not one that goes out and spends money, whether it's players, front office type stuff. So part of me thinks maybe that was it, but it was so long ago. It's kind of hard to really find the details of it, but when you
But
see
he was
something
also
like
there.
that, kind of concerns me.
So his first stint was 99 to 2005 at Roma, and that was also, I think, when they won their title. I think they won the title in 2001, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Um, so, being there at that time also speaks positively of him, but also could be a reason why if he was trying to sell Totti after that title year or whatever it was. Obviously this is not something that we're well versed in, but that could be kind of like a sell high situation like you're talking about.
Yeah, that
Um,
was when he was there. It was 2000, 2001. I'm looking now.
yeah, yeah,
And then even after that, they were runners up, and the season after, the next two seasons, 05, 06, 07, 07, 08, like they had some good runs during his time there.
yeah,
Obviously Roma, I don't think they've ever, I think the Europa was their first time winning the major trophy or the Conference League, European trophy. Um,
yeah.
and they've only been winners of Serie A three times in their history. This is all off Fought Mob. I'm just pulling because it's quick and easy. They've obviously come second many, many times. But they're a club with like rich history and stuff. But again, a club that always kind of gets close to or near the top, has competed, but never really ever went out and spent serious money compared to
Right.
like their rivals and stuff. So he was there during those times, and I'd say, that's definitely still a good resume, especially with England, even though England have
Yeah.
technically never really won anything. Like it's a country itself that's rooted in this, and they're always
2007 to
favorites.
11. So was he the assistant manager to Capello?
Uh, could be. I wonder if this has
Um,
probably should have looked at this a little bit before, but we're just spitballing now. But I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, he was the assistant manager to Capello because Capello was there 07 to 12. Yeah. So he was Capello's assistant manager, which I feel like that's probably the worst thing on his resume, ironically, because that was like when England was quite unimpressive in that
but
range of
again, he was, I
years.
think in that time too, he was an assistant manager, I think it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'd venture out to say that more technical directors know how to spot players, don't know if they know really how much to like coach and tactics. So can't really put
Exactly.
that on him because I think based on what you're saying on his resume or CV, like that's the only really
That's the
on
only
field
managerial.
like
Yeah.
managerial type of role he's had. Everything else he's had success and has been more of a director, technical director, which I'd imagine just he's out looking for players and putting
Yep.
together a team, not
Yep.
necessarily coaching them.
Yep.
Um, so
In theory, like in general sense, and we definitely talked about this when we were last on 2 weeks ago. Like I think this is a good move. This is kind of the direction we want to go. I think the only concerning part for me is what's concerning about Papadzim is that all one person has so much power, right? And that's where we're right now with Papadzim is that one person has so much power, and then you're just at the mercy of that person's opinions, decisions, what that person is feeding the big boss, who is obviously Alafuso. Um, and this is just a different version of that, right? Because if Papadzim has all the power now and all the power just goes to a single CEO, you know, 10 days from now and a year from now and whatever, what's really different? You hope that the person who is holding all that power is ultimately better than the previous guy, but I said something like, really there should be kind of like a board of directors or something, or some sort of board where all the power is not consolidated in one person. The decision making is up to multiple people, multiple opinions, multiple voices, not one person whispering in, the most important person's ear. So I'm not disappointed in this. I just think it's almost like an intermediary step to like ultimately where we should be going, which is multiple people making decisions.
I think the only hard part with that is Alafouzos has a tough time doing that. And just thinking about it in hindsight for something like a club in Greece, you'd have to find multiple people for that board that are football
Yeah,
involved.
yeah,
I think with Baldini, I think it's a better case if you're just comparing it to what we have now, just because he has a much better resume
yep,
than Papadzim. But at the same token, it's a completely different league, different crop of players, different type of budget. Um, just a lot of different things that aren't going to be what he's used to.
yeah.
Our academy probably isn't near what the crop was when he was in England or Italy or at Real for that matter. We're talking about three or four of the biggest countries and clubs in world football. Um, in his three or four stops. And it's when was the last time? What was his last position? When was it? I guess was my question. Because
2015 at Tottenham, 13 to
so I mean,
15 TD at Tottenham.
it's been a decade. I think that might have been the Bale days when Bale
Could
was
be,
there.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, Modric had just left. I mean, Tottenham were still on the up there. So like, if you're looking at the teams he's been at and like the times in their success, like it's kind of a no-brainer. But
Yeah.
part of me thinks like, why has he been out of football for a decade? And if he's got this kind of resume, why Panathinaikos?
It seemed like he was like properly retired, and I think I asked someone this question. I don't remember what answer I got, but yeah, I basically asked the same question. Like, if this guy was just happy being retired, like, why, out of all the teams, why would he come out of retirement for us? Like, it seems kind of silly and whatever. But yeah, I don't. I had the
It
same
could be
question.
like that foreign thing, like all the foreigners come to Greece because it's just a year-round vacation for them. Not to say
I
that's what it is for him,
guess.
but I mean, I guess he could kind of still work, but it won't be. It'll be more in a relaxed state. He's not at like a top 20 club in the world
Yeah.
or in England or Italy where the pressure's as high. He can still work his magic, but not have to do it at such a high level. Um, but there's a lot of, the arrow can go in so many different directions. And again, this is just kind of what the rumor is. I guess it's been building up though, because I think they even said that I think Korninopoulos even mentioned in his tweet that he was in Athens for a meeting for it, but I could be wrong. Um, so I mean,
In
yeah,
the immediate future, I think this is good, right? Like the sooner you can get
100%.
Papadzim out of these crucial decision making positions and all that, it's good. So this is in the immediate future, I think a positive. It's a step in the right direction. And all you got to hope is that he is the right guy to kind of take over a lot of Papadzim's duties because he's going to be the one making footballing decisions, both, players and more kind of behind the scenes decisions that are going to affect the club. So, um, yeah, I think this is overall good.
Yeah,
Um,
agree.
that's what we got for the kind of overhead managerial situations. Obviously, the coaching with Godi, Baldini, and the Papazim. Let's touch really quick on the upcoming games, which are our next European game already is this week against Go Ahead Eagles at home. Um, Go Ahead Eagles are from the Netherlands. They um, they have not started off the season well.
Were they
They
recently promoted side two to the
something like that, yeah.
Eredivisie, I think.
Yeah. Um they only have 9 points from their first seven league games, which okay, you could, turn around and say that we're not too hot I also. But yeah, seven matches, 9 points, 2-3-2, I think. Um, zero goal difference.
I am wrong, by the way.
They
They've been in the top league for the last like 7 or 8 years. It seems like they're a
okay.
mid table type team, but yeah, they're not having a good start, like you said.
Yeah, they are a relatively young team. Their average age is just above 24. Their market value is 30 million. Ours is somewhere around 100 million. So, kind of they're a pot four team also from the draw. So they are on paper the easiest team that we will face. Also being home. There's no reason that given all of that we've just said, there's no reason that this should not be 3 points. Um, what are your thoughts, Alki?
I mean, I have to go do my research on them, but even just briefly looking at them, they have one guy over 30 and three guys over 25. Everyone else is 25 and younger. So they're a young team, like you said. Not doing too strong, but my concern is going into it too content. And the other thing is, like you said, it's Europe. Anything can happen. Um, it's a Dutch team. The Dutch always has a good core surrounding just this sport in general, especially their youth. Their youth programs, I think across the world are probably one of the top three, top four, I'd say, in just producing players. Now, how that players pan out later on is kind of iffy, but I'd say from that like 15 to like 22, 23 is when you see a lot of their just how far ahead they are against most countries, compared to like, they're probably up there with the likes of Spain and Italy and stuff. We're going to probably see another heavy rotation, but I think a couple key guys we saw over the weekend got a break, like Sanchez, which I think we're going to talk about, came in late in the game. Dessers, I think, is supposed to be back from injury. He had a knock. Swiderski probably will get a good run. Um, it's just going to depend on our wing play, I think, ultimately. Zauri, I think he came on as a sub at the weekend. Tete has played some heavy minutes. I don't know when Pelistri's going to be back. Don't
Yeah,
know
we
if
have we have a handful of injury concerns, which is obviously concerning, but also annoying because it's just kind of like deja vu every year, every season. Kind of the same situation. Like Drago is out now for a few weeks. He's been ruled out until international break. So we're gonna see Lafon again. Which again, that comes with a little bit of hold your breath situation, but also good in the sense that, we've been saying that he needs to kind of gel with the center back guys. Dessers was questionable but probable, like you said. Palistri's gone absolutely missing after he seemed like our only goal threat in the first couple games of the season. At least we haven't kind of needed to rely on him
do we
since that.
even
But
know what his injury is? I think somebody had mentioned in the chat, but I don't.
he
It's kind of one of those ghost things. He's become like the new Palmer Brown of like he's just out. We
exactly
don't know why, how long.
last international break, he went to Uruguay. He played. I don't think we didn't hear anything about, it, and then he came back, but didn't actually come
Came
back.
back
Like he didn't.
injured.
Yeah. So it's like you put it well with the Palmer Brown situation. Like just kind of ghost. We don't. at least me and you don't know what's going on, but it doesn't seem like anybody really knows what's going on with him. And he's will be out. Um, yeah,
I mean, our
I
midfield rotation, I'm
Sanchez,
not worried
Dessers, yeah.
about. Sanchez, Dessers, all those guys. I think, like I said, the only concern for me with rotation is more not even the defense, because I think center back, I'm curious if he's still going to play Palmer Brown. He's been sensational for me, at least back four, but Tuba's been good, and Ingesson has been quietly been really good too. Jedvai's kind of been hit and miss because he's kind of been injured coming back, but we're seeing rotation, but the rotation hasn't concerned me because I haven't seen our, at least the mid of our defense hasn't dropped. It's more the fullbacks, and at the weekend we saw Kyriakopoulos and Calabria again play kind of heavy minutes, and I touched on this, both coming from Serie A. They've both always been kind of 60 to 70-ish minute type players. I think Kyriakopoulos, I mentioned it, was last season was probably his first season. He had the full season, 90 minutes, game in and game out. But if you look at historically, outside of some injuries he's had, like he's always been kind of like a 60 to 7 minute player, kind of like a Jurisic, but for our defense. And when they both played at the weekend, I think I'd have to look, but I think they both still played some heavy minutes. I get concerned rotating in having guys like, even though Kotsiras had a good game, Kotsiras Mladenovic as our starting fullbacks always just concerns me because you never know what you're gonna get from either
Kyriakopoulos,
of them.
Kyriakopoulos played 90 minutes. Jurčić was subbed off, which is not unusual for him. He also has like that, kind of 60 minute threshold, 60, 70. He was subbed off at 55. Um,
And Bakasetas, who's been really, really good, I think, just unsung quietly in our midfield. He's played some heavy minutes. I mean, our midfield, I'm not usually concerned because we have good depth there, but it's like our depth with our good players, they've been playing heavy minutes. So I'm just curious
Ingesson
what
played
Kontis will do.
Ingesson played back-to-back games now because he started the last European game. He started at the weekend, so expect not to see Ingesson. I would be very surprised to see him start 3 games in the span of a week, especially at
Palmer
his
Brown, though,
age.
what did he do? He probably played, if he didn't play
He
90, he
he
played
played
close.
90. He played 90, but I would still expect to see Palmer Brown and Tuba. I think he's
Yeah,
going to
that's
go
that's my guess.
probably the main two guys. Tuba's rested. I think he's a lock. The bigger question is Palmer Brown, given that he played 90 at the weekend. But I think I Palmer Brown's young. Seems like he's mostly over the injury concerns, knock on wood. So I think those two at center back is a safe bet. Kyriakopoulos is one to watch since he played 90 minutes at the weekend. Do you trust Mladenovic, like you said, in this game? I would still probably go Kyriakopoulos and expect him
Yeah,
to play maybe 60 or 70 minutes. Um, the midfield, yeah, you picked out. I think the midfield is kind of where, even though I'm not worried about it, I think that's where we could see kind of the biggest, um, not
rotation.
not surprise, but yeah, rotation. But I'm also not going to be overly concerned about the rotation situation because he shut us up last week, right? So
Yeah. It's
I'm
more so
not.
for certain key positions like the wing play. I mean, Tete's played some heavy minutes, but it's like our backups right now are either injured or can't play heavy minutes. And when Jursic and Tete come off, who do we have? We're left with Mancini. I mean, Zaruri got his well rest, so I'd imagine to maybe see him play either heavy minutes or start.
I
Um,
I think Zaruri should be one of the first names on the team sheet, just because also he's got kind of this momentum
Dynamic
going.
play. He's just
Like
game
even if it
changer.
was a even if it was a fluke, let's say, again, no one's saying he's going to score another 3 goals. That would be amazing. But even if last week was a fluke, he still got this momentum going. So I think to not start him would be completely foolish. So I would say, especially since Jurisic, who is kind of one of our lowest stamina guys, he started at the weekend.
And you
So
saw him kind of teeter off toward then. Just his burst of pace. It's disappointing, not just in him, just it's with his injuries and his legs and his age just isn't there. Couple times they put a couple through balls for me and he just couldn't beat his man. But I mean, I think Dester's coming back from injury. I'd probably say he's probably a lock for, I think, off the bench. I don't see him starting.
you don't think, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Let's say they're both 100% healthy, Swiderski or Dessers, and it seems like think Swiderski.
I think just coming off an injury and just it gives you. similar but kind of a different approach to the game, or it might be vice versa because Swiderski has played and started the last, what is it,
Yeah.
3 games, I think, and he's been productive and gotten goals. Like if we get another quick start, you know,
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing Swiderski still carry that on and let Dessers come in and clean up and pop in a goal or something if he can.
Yeah. I think I also kind of agree. Maybe Swiderski for 60 and Dessers for 30. That's kind of what it seems to be heading for. It is important to note that like this is kind of where we see the drawback of not including Bondovic in the European list, which at the time all of us kind of felt like it was a weird decision, and we're already kind of feeling the effects of it. Like you only have two strikers. If one goes down, you have one striker. Um, there's a situation, looking ahead, there's a situation in January where Dessers has to go to AFCON. Unclear how many games he would miss, or if he'd have to, it does kind of overlap with European commitments, but the moral of the story is that it really puts you thin in a position where you don't want to be thin in, because injuries, other commitments, you might be down to one striker. If that one striker goes down, something happens to Federski, then what are you going to do? You're going to play a makeshift striker, which you don't want to do. We've seen that before. You don't want to do, especially when you
No,
have them in your team, right?
yeah. It's the
You
one
don't
time
want to
we have a
limit your
plethora of
options.
strikers that are all, I'd say outside of Yeremeyev, who just we've seen him score goals when he's a super sub, not as a starter, but he's still capable. Like you can get through a game with him. But this is the first season in a while where we've got a plethora of them, where in seasons past it's only been one or two. Now we're not using them. It's just kind of disappointing. And then even guys like is it Tadorbo we were all excited about, and I don't think
Yeah.
he's included in the European list.
He came on, didn't he?
I could be completely wrong. I could be mixing him up with Chirivella. I remember one of the newer midfielders we got wasn't included in the European list officially, but it could have just been for that one game. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Tabor
Um,
that came on in against Young Boys, he got like a 5-10 minute
okay,
cameo. He
that
came
was
on.
his debut or cameo, I think, then, right? Or
Yeah.
something like that. Maybe I
Yeah.
was confusing it with someone else, but
He came on for
um,
Baca. Um,
okay.
yeah. So
I
that's
mean,
what we
good
got.
problems to
Yeah.
have, I think. I was just gonna say
Yeah.
good problems to have just because, in years past we've seen heavy rotation and not work in our favor, but I think this is one of the first years, like we said, other than fullbacks and even fullbacks, at least we still have four healthy fullbacks, two for each side, where even with rotation we've seen it, we've gotten results where I'm just not too worried just because we've got in most positions other than like you said, the striker if one goes down, where we've got our backups are still pretty competent and good enough to get through a game. I'd say, like I said, other than the fullback is the only one that concerns me.
And then after the European commitments on Wednesday, we have Atromitos at the weekend, which I don't have much to say about that. Just gotta do the job, gotta keep the momentum that we've got going right now. It's at home. Atromitos obviously is kind of one of those teams that always gives us problems here or there.
Yeah.
So you can't take them lightly, and we need to start collecting points in the league, which we've started to do, but that was only our first league win, believe it or not, right? It's still early days, but that was only our first league win, and it just shows kind of the hole that we've dug for ourselves. But you know,
Yeah.
the theme of what we've been talking about is hopefully it's looking up. Um, yeah. Anything else to add to that?
No, just kind of continue the trend like you said. I mean, hopefully just keep seeing the rotation. It's hard to say anything about Atromitos at this point, just kind of depending on what happens, I think, in Europe at the week and what happens of what players or what we see, and then kind of go from there. Um, but yeah, just good luck to the boys and Kontis and everyone, and just keep this momentum going is all I want.
Yes, sir. That's pretty much it for the FC side. And finally, I mean, we don't have much to talk about today, but very soon we'll have some stuff to talk about the BC, because we got our first EuroLeague game tomorrow on the 30th, 9:15 Greece time, I believe, against Bayern. So it's a home match, open EuroLeague season. Um, Bayern was good last season. They were not good 2 seasons ago, but last year they showed up and they were actually a formidable opponent. They gave us trouble both games, I feel like, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they definitely
So
did.
uh
They started the season really well last year. I can't recall if they made playoffs. I think they were in the play-in maybe, but they were one of those that started really hot and kind of as the season went on slowly petered out, but I mean it's definitely a team, it's a new season. I still think they've got most of their players. I think they signed a few new players too. But I'm excited for that to be back and be able to keep up with that. We've got a few new signings in the new season. Um,
or when Gabriel went there. I forgot about that. Yeah. So Gabriel, familiar faces over there. Um Ibaka was there, right? He left now. I don't see him on
I
the list.
believe so. Yeah, I'm trying to pull
Yeah.
it up, but he was. I just remember Ibaka being in a red jersey. I don't remember if it was them or for a different team, but yeah, he was there. I believe so. So
Yeah.
they've had some changes. We'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, it'd be good to start off EuroLeague on the right foot. Obviously, expectations are always high with the BC. So excited to have EuroLeague back because that's always fun.
Yeah, definitely want to bounce back from kind of what I would consider a mediocre season last season. I mean, obviously based on the one before, still made it playoffs and I think Final Four, but just kind of it just didn't seem the same as the year before. Like I said, like we're talking about with FC, like that hunger and how to close out games and stuff. And so hopefully we just see these guys kind of build off because a few of our guys, even with the national team run, had a pretty good summer, with Doliopoulos and Mitoglu. Did pretty
Right.
good. Slukas was, I think, back in more game shape form. He didn't really play much for them prior to that, and last season it was kind of on and off, and he's getting up there in age, so we've got a lot of good guard play to help him, and you know, hoping for a better outcome this season. Obviously, we
Well, that's what
obviously want the championship, but
I was gonna point out. Kind of, with some stuff to be excited about is like these new signings, which we didn't make a lot of signings, but the signings that we made are signings to get excited about. TJ Shorts was one of the best EuroLeague players last year, and we locked him up, which is awesome. Toliopoulos was a good signing. Rogavopoulos. And obviously the big one is Lasor, who is not a signing, but is kind of
kind of a
that
signing because we didn't get
kind
him
of a
last season,
signing. Yeah,
really. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So there's definitely stuff to be excited about, and yeah,
cool.
I think that's it, Alki. Unless you got anything else. We covered the FC, we covered the BC, we talked a lot about the FC, and yeah, looking forward to tomorrow and Wednesday. We got back-to-back days of games, and yeah, things are good now, looking up.
Yeah, let's hope that we'll meet, over the weekend and stuff. Obviously, the Aussie boys will cover, but hopefully they come in with the same energy and they're coming in with the same happiness that we've got at least after this weekend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. It was a pleasure talking to you. Guys, follow us, share the pod, give us 5 stars, please. Spread the word um, about the team we love. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here, Alki, and we will see you probably in 2 weeks.
Yep,
Have
sounds good.
Take
Thanks,
care,
Alex.
everyone.
All right.